And welcome on in to another season preview show. I'm your host, Terry, joined by Nick again on my left and Andrew McGinnis on my right. Welcome to the show, Andrew. It's awesome to have you. And of course, what better team to bring you in here to talk about than the Montreal Canadiens? This is going to be a great show. And of course, if you want to find Nick, myself, or Andrew, all of our links to our Twitters are in the description below. So make sure to give everybody a follow. Jumping into the first segment here is additions and subtractions here for Montreal, and not really two big lists compared to some other teams that have done a lot in the offseason. I think when you look at it here, Alex Newhook is the biggest addition here for the Canadiens. Casey DeSmith, um, I just have this gut feeling that Casey DeSmith is going to do well in Montreal. I can't explain why. There's no real facts or stats to put behind it. I just have this gut feeling that DeSmith is going to play well in Montreal. So I'm going on the record saying that here. So I think that's going to be another good addition for them. Subtractions, losing Mike Hoffman, I guess, hurts the offense a bit. Paul Byron, a long standing Hab. Joel Edmondson. Um, I wouldn't really say that hurts the defense. Montreal has a lot of young defensemen, and they're a young team going into this season in the future, and it's time to let your prospects play. So I think it's a good subtraction, Edmondson, uh, for the Habs. Nick, we'll go to you first this time. Addition subtractions for Montreal. What do you think here?
Yeah, really, it looks like they didn't really do too much here. Joel Emison, you said, I don't think that was much of a loss because I don't remember the last time I remember seeing him play. Like I remember he was somebody I read his name on the injury report every single time I was looking at it. I like the addition of Newhook. I think that he'll add some nice forward depth there for them. Casey DeSmith, I don't know if he's somebody that that'll be getting much playing time. Maybe when Jake Allen gets hurt, or if he gets hurt, because we know Jake Allen's injury history. I actually like Montembeault to be the starter. We'll get into that later. But yeah, I mean, Casey Smith, I think is a solid backup for the Canadiens there. We knew that their defense and their goaltending was the big problem for them last year. But overall, it doesn't look like they did too much. They got rid of some salary there with Hoffman and Pitlick and things along those lines. But I don't think their offseason really moved the needle or anything along those lines.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm not saying that Casey DeSmith's going to be the starter, but I do think I just have this gut feeling and I can't explain it. I think he's going to play well when he does get in the net. Andrew, additions and subtractions for the Habs. What do you think about the offseason so far?
I gotta say, I love the jersey being represented on the show. I can't believe I'm not the one that's wearing the jersey, but I like that, and the graphics look great there with Newhook and Hoffman. Look, this is the funny thing about certain teams like the Canadiens. I feel like they don't always have to. The additions don't really jump off the page, right? Like you said, Terry. But I think that for a rebuilding team, it's not always a bad thing because the additions come through the draft. A lot of times additions for teams that are already really good, they come in the offseason. But the additions really for the Canadiens are just kind of in their prospect system. Subtractions are the thing that stuck out to me the most. And realistically, that's kind of like what all the crazy Habs fans on Twitter have been calling for 2 years now. Getting rid of some of these contracts, getting rid of a couple guys. Mike Hoffman, we didn't know if they'd even be able to get rid of him. They were able to do so. Edmondson, I'm happy they were able to put him in a decent location. Paul Byron is actually still working with the Canadiens, which is kind of cool seeing him. You know, he's done with hockey, but he's still with organization. And then I think he was on the ice yesterday with Caulfield and Newhook and Doc and those guys. So, I'm picking up some younger guys as well that will kind of come up the system a little bit. So the Newhook trade, look, I think there's been a lot of different people talking about him and kind of what he'll bring to the lineup. I think realistically, people are kind of hoping, and that really the Newhook can kind of do exactly what Kirby Dach did, which was just have a way better year in his first year with the Canadiens than he did in his previous year, and where he was. The thing is, it's really easy sometimes on a good team to stack up points which I actually kind of think Drouin will benefit from that, playing with his old buddy McKinnon. But when you also fall deep into the depth chart like Newhook kind of did, I feel like it's he's going to stand out a lot more on a team like the Canadiens than a team like he was on before, just because there was just so much high end talent. He's not a big guy like height wise, and doesn't like throw it a ton of hits every game, but he's from Newfoundland. Anybody that's not familiar with where that is in Canada, a lot of players that come out of there, they're not really your fancy players. They're your rough and tough guys that are not scared to mix it up, drop the mitts and be tough. And Newhook seems like he can score and drop the mitts maybe if he needs to. But I feel like he will be a good addition, but I just hope that he can bring more than just two-way hockey. We need production out of him ASAP. The Casey DeSmith trade, I think it was just one of those ones where they weren't really looking. It just kind of happened that way. And as Nick talked about, we will go in later on about the goalie situation and the top 2, top 3 situation. But I know we're going to get into it, but I just wanted to say, like, Casey DeSmith being brought into the team, whether or not they keep him for a while or he's traded off or different things, like I think that Primo, his time with the Habs might be kind of coming to an end, because I know goalies development takes a lot longer than other people at other positions, but Primo has pretty much done well with Laval, and then whenever he gets called up to the Habs, he hasn't done well at all. So it comes to a point where you get to that. Are you just an AHL guy, or do you have NHL potential? Because every time I've watched, I don't watch many AHL games, guys, I'll be honest, but I've seen his stats. But then whenever Primo goes up to the NHL, he doesn't do very well. So maybe Casey DeSmith just kind of comes into the mix and adds that goalie competition. But I'm impressed with the subtractions. The additions don't really stick off the page, but for what they were able to get rid of, clear out some cap space, it's one thing for your team to be bad guys, but this year they're at least going to be a not very good young team, and that's what I want. If I'm going to watch my team lose, I want to watch them lose in a developmental way, not having Mike Hoffman out there hogging power play time.
That's some great points. So basically, what you're saying is there's a lot of addition by subtraction here.
I like
He's getting
that.
rid of a
Yeah,
lot of these guys. So
pretty
that's
much.
pretty good. Awesome. We'll move on to the second segment here. Again, kind of a small list here from Montreal when it comes to upcoming free agents. A lot of their players are signed, I guess you could say long term. But Sean Monahan, UFA, forward, the RFA defenseman shouldn't have. There shouldn't be many issues signing them. So really, it comes down to the goalies, Casey DeSmith and Samuel Montembeault, both UFAs. Not a whole lot here pressing issue wise for Montreal compared to other teams. And potentially we could see, I think, most of the UFAs potentially leave in the offseason when the cap goes up next year. And if DeSmith and Montembeault neither have a good season, you could see Montreal make changes in the offseason at goal. Andrew, we'll go to you second this time. Upcoming free agents. Not a big list here from Montreal compared to some other teams, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. What do you think here should be the Habs' focus in the offseason?
Yeah, like I said, this is the most I've ever followed prospects. Like, since I've been a fan my whole life, I've never really followed prospects and in the farm system that much, and players after they got drafted. But it seems like that's kind of what the positive thing is about the Canadiens right now, and they're signing players once they get to the team. You're obviously getting your 2 best players, Suzuki and Caulfield, signed long term and mixing around a couple different guys. Look at Doc's contract. I genuinely believe Kirby Dach has one of the better contracts in the NHL. And for what he's being paid. So I think that you look at some of these contracts, and the Sean Monahan one sticks out to me. I get in debates with people all the time about this. Sean Monahan, number one, isn't very old. I respect the hell of the fact that he came back to the Canadiens, didn't have to do it because he knew it's a rebuilding year. He almost felt like he wasn't able to give his all to the Canadiens due to missing so much to injury. And I almost feel like that was his way of being like, hey guys, like he didn't really have a full season with the Canadiens. But looking around at this list here, Terry, I could see a decent amount of these guys not being with the Canadiens, a couple years from now. We'll see. But the goaltending situation is very interesting. I'm very curious about the future for Samuel Montembeault. We saw what he did at the Worlds. winning with Team Canada. I've always been a Jake Allen fan, but I think it's cool. And then you got Fowler, and anybody that watched the Montreal Canadiens little documentary thing that they put out on YouTube, Fowler seems like a badass and someone that's kind of been counted out his whole life despite winning all the time. Fowler might be coming up in that goalie system in a few years. So, but Wideman, let's be honest here. Wideman is he's the older but smaller leadership piece, because every team needs leaders, and not just young leaders. Every team needs older guys. Like, let's be honest. I'm not saying Wideman's a fighter, but what happens is if every single player on a team is like 23, 24 years old, you start to get bullied by some of the older teams. So my problem is with some of these Canadiens fans on Twitter, they keep on saying they want to like tank, like trade every older player. We can't be out here running a team made of 21-year-olds. It's just not something you can do in hockey. So you need to keep some of these older players. But I'm happy to see Monahan back. Hopefully he can stick around, but I don't think he will. And the rest of the guys, I feel like they'll be all right with the Habs.
Yeah, for sure. Yekash, he's shown the ability to hit a lot. Wasn't he the
Yeah,
hit leader for the Habs, I think,
that
this
guy,
year?
Jack guy,
Yeah. It's okay.
yeah. I
So
think
he's a good
he's gonna
promising young
fight a
player as
lot.
well.
He's gonna fight a lot less after he injured himself in his fight. He even said in interviews like, "Hey, I proved."
Oh, it looks like Andrew froze there. But Nick, we'll jump over to you. What do you think here? Upcoming free agents.
Yeah, for me, I think it's just one player I circled on this, and it's player I mentioned in the last slide as well. It's Samuel Montembeault. When you look at him, he was as bad as the defense was for Montreal last year. He was an above average goaltender according to advanced metrics. He had a 12 goals saved above average. Like, he was top 15 in the NHL in goals saved above average last year. He was actually somebody who played pretty well. So he's somebody that I really like and I want to see going forward. And the thing is, they don't have many UFAs or RFAs because most of their guys, they either are young guys or they have signed long term. Suzuki is signed past the 2029 season. Gallagher is signed till 2027. Anderson till 2027. Dvorak and Armia to 25. Doc to 26. Newhook to 27. Like, this is a team that most of their core is signed long term, or they're young, like Slafkovsky and Rafael Pinard, like that they got until like 25. And Slafkovsky, I think, is hurt right now. But like, this is a team where they don't have many UFAs because you're either signed long term or you're on a rookie deal for the next couple of years. So this team is built to be able to, I think, compete within the next couple of years if this youth develops and things along those lines. So for me, it's only one player, and it's Montembeault. I think that all the other players on this, they're extendable or whatever. But for me, if I'm focusing on anybody, it's Montembeault here.
All right. Andrew, anything you wanted to finish off with before we head on to the next segment?
I'm really, a lot of people say Jesse, I think it's Ylonen is how you pronounce it. I'm curious how he plays and what the future holds for him. Other than that, I agree. I mean, Nick's pretty much said it perfectly. It's either a bunch of young guys on rookie deals or guys that have stepped up and signed for 6 to 8 years, which is really great to see. So obviously the two guys on the left, the forwards, curious to see what happens to them. I doubt Monahan returns. Ylonen, I think it's kind of on a prove it year this year. And the young two defensemen, I mean, it's going to be amazing. Look at the prospect pool not even the prospects, look at the D-core for the Canadiens. Barron, Jackeye, Harris, Gooley. You've got obviously just drafting Reinbacher. There's so many options for them. So I feel like they're going to try and sign some of these defensemen as fast as they can when the rookie deals finish up.
Awesome. Perfect segue into looking at that defense as well as the forwards and goaltending. The possible lineup here for the Montreal Canadiens. This is projected from different sites, so no one shoot the messenger if you don't like how the lineup is set up, because it's not on me. But obviously, we'll see in preseason. We'll see different guys come up, and we'll see different combinations. But Caulfield, Suzuki, and Doc looks like the top line here. Newhook, Dvorak, Anderson, Slavkovsky, Evans, and Gallagher on the third pair. Harvey Pinard, Monahan, Armia on the fourth. A lot of youth there, a lot of question marks at times, and health. That's a big thing here for Montreal. Obviously, a lot of teams staying healthy is important, but with this Montreal team, staying healthy is crucial for them, I think. Looking at the defense, uh, Matheson, Savard, Harris, Weidman, Yekaj, and Kovacevic, Gooley, Barron, Lindstrom, all there as well. So Montreal has a lot of options here at defense, depending on where they want to go. And then goaltending, the three goaltenders there. And I don't want to say anyone's a clear-cut starter here. I think coming into training camp, I think it could be anyone. So we'll have to see here. Nick, we'll go to you first this time. What do you think with the possible lineup here for Montreal?
Yeah, this Montreal team kind of reminds me a little bit of Buffalo. Like this feels like a team that is dominated by their youth, and if they develop and if they play to the way they can, this is a team like the Sabres who can be a fringe playoff team. Like I think that's like the ceiling for this team. I like the defense for this. I think they're going to be very improved because you also got to keep in mind last year. Caulfield missed a ton of time. Slavkovsky missed a lot of time. Monahan missed a lot of time. I believe Gallagher missed a decent amount too. Dvorak, Anderson. I remember reading all these guys' names off on injury reports. It felt like every game with the Montreal Canadiens last year. If they can stay healthy and this youth plays up to the way they can, this can be one of the more improved teams in the NHL. I really like this lineup. I like that they have a number one overall pick on the third line. I think that shows you have a little bit of depth. Monahan on the fourth line. I think that shows you have a little bit of depth here. And their goaltending, I think that has a decent amount of depth too. Jake Allen will probably be the opening day starter just because they're paying him $3.8 million compared to 1.8 for DeSmith or $1 million for Montembeault, and money talks when it comes to starters sometimes. But I think this team's got a decent amount of potential, and I really like this lineup that they have. If it stays healthy, of course, if it stays healthy.
Yes. Andrew, possible lineup here for the Montreal Canadiens. What do you think here?
Yeah, Terry, I apologize for popping in and out here. I just ran an internet test and it said it's working really fast, and that I keep coming in and out. So my bad on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we say when I've been doing NFL prop previews, and like we keep on saying if they stay healthy, and it's hard to handicap health. But one thing we can actually talk about, guys, the Canadiens fired their entire medical staff last season at the end of the year. That's got to say something. I mean, they were like, "What the hell's going on with everybody getting injured?" I keep saying this, and I feel bad ripping my own team. It's one thing to be bad, but be old. But it's also one thing to be bad and be injured. I mean, last year, it wasn't the Montreal Canadiens, it was the Montreal Rocket half the year. I went to see Montreal versus Toronto last April, and I knew my team wasn't going to win, but I was at least hoping to see a handful of guys that I knew that didn't play for the Rocket, and that's what I ended up seeing. So, looking at this lineup, I think the way it's built, who I have a big circle around is Dvorak. I mean, Dvorak has to step up. He's somebody that I think that whatever he did this offseason, it better have been good enough to not just be a 200-foot player. I'm tired of guys like that being just 200-foot guys, face-off guys. Anderson is someone that I'm high on. I think that he is very physical. He's not scared to go in the corners. He can create plays like that. I think that those guys will be separated, Newhook, Dvorak, Anderson. I also think Evans will be a fourth line guy. I can't see Monahan coming back and then just putting, hey, you're a fourth line player. Nick doesn't agree with me there, but I just can't see them being like, hey, Monahan, like, welcome back to the
Monahan
lineup.
On the fourth line, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were saying you don't agree with me. Yeah. I was like, I just can't see them being like, Monahan, like, welcome back to the team this year, buddy. For the oldest guy on the roster, pretty much. And Gallagher, let's be honest here, guys. That's one of the worst contracts. I hate to say it. I love Gally. But again, there's only so much being a 200-foot guy can do. You can't be getting paid more than $5 million for being a good 200-foot player. You have to score. You got to put the puck in the net. But I'm excited to see what Slafkovsky can do. It sounds like he had a crazy good offseason. He lost a shit ton of weight, which is interesting because everybody was boasting about how much this guy weighs last year going into camp. And now, like, he noticeably, I don't know if you guys saw any pictures, he noticeably looks way skinnier. So we'll see how that affects him and his cardio and things like that. But people don't realize how hard it is to slide into the NHL game. I mean, Terry's guy, Kaprizov, did it, but Slafkovsky's a lot bigger than him. So that creates a bigger target for getting hit and different things like that. I thought Slafkovsky made a lot of plays, but didn't score nearly as many goals. He wasn't healthy. I'm excited. But if they weren't in this division, I mean, you've got them, Ottawa, Detroit, and Buffalo. Those teams we're all kind of bottom of the pack of the division. Then you've got like Toronto, Boston, Tampa on the top. And then it's kind of just a battle between like that middle spot. So I'm looking forward to it. But I tell you what, I do like the Matheson-Savard pairing. I'm curious to see if they end up sticking with Harris and Weidman. But I think that Gooley's going to be a guy that takes a really huge leap this year. He's already was playing a ton of minutes until he got injured. So I'm looking forward to it. But I'll tell you what, like I'm tired of seeing line shuffling, and I've loved what Marty St. Louis has done. But I want to see a couple different line pairings been created and stick with them. Especially with a young team, you can't be giving these guys new line pairings every single game. But I'm excited, guys.
Yeah, that comes with the coach. Like, you could look at Dean Evison. He will put Hartman on the top line, and that's it. And that's how it's going to be. And he's set in his ways. And sometimes I wish he would change the line. So we're looking at it at different points. Our coaches are doing different things. But and with the Kaprizov point, Kaprizov played in the KHL. So he had quite a few years extra to jump in and Slafkovsky, 18-year-old, all the pressure is on him. Now everyone's talking about him as being a bust. People just need to relax. Not every player can just be McDavid in their first year. Some years it's going to take, and obviously I'm not saying he's going to be McDavid, but it's going to take time to grow into the player that he's going to be. Moving on.
One thing I want to say really quick, Terry, is that
sure.
I always say this about the Habs, but it's one thing that I really like about them, and I know everyone knows they're my favorite team. But one of my favorite things about the Canadiens, if you look at the lineups that you just had there, it's like realistically, we know who Caulfield is, we know who Suzuki is, you know how great some of these guys are. But if you look at the next three lines after the top line, I truly believe that there's not like one that's like miles and miles and miles ahead of the other, which is really good for line pairing or like matching up with opponents when you're at home, right? Or even when you're on the road, you don't have to worry as much about one line getting dominated. So honestly, people can say what they want about that COVID year when the Habs made their big run, but I thought that's what really helped them benefit was that there wasn't one stacked line. It was almost like the Habs have had four mediocre lines since I was a kid. Never had that one big line. So hopefully the Caulfield Suzuki can be that for me. But I just think it's cool that they have kind of four lines of guys that are capable of scoring. Maybe not 40 goal guys, but guys that are capable.
Yeah, you can make an argument for like that Evans, Gallagher, Slafkovsky line to be the second line, not the third. Like you can make arguments that those two are exchangeable there for second and third line.
Definitely.
With Evans as the third line center, Monahan as the fourth, I went by daily faceoff because I had comments in previous videos about pairings. So instead of looking at a bunch of different sites, I just decided I'm going to do what daily faceoff says.
Yeah.
And that's it.
I understand there. No, I wasn't saying that they were wrong. I was saying you can make arguments that those second.
No, I know. But earlier, Andrew was surprised that both of you were surprised Monahan won, and so was I. I was surprised that Monahan was on the fourth line, but
it's also a big year for RHP because Raphael Harvey-Bedard had a good year last year, like ever since he got called up, pretty much. But now it's like, okay, man. You're not playing for Laval anymore. You're a Montreal Canadian. Before it was kind of like he was riding a high. Now it's like this is what we expect out of you every game.
Yeah, for sure. Looking at our fourth segment, which is future bets for this season for the Montreal Canadiens, and odds makers have Montreal as the clear-cut bottom team in the Eastern Conference. It is all settled, signed, sealed, and delivered. Montreal is the worst team in the Eastern Conference, according to bookmakers. And I'm not going to come out here and say Montreal is making the playoffs. You should run out and place this bet. But plus 1,700 just seems a little bit high for me. I think there's quite a bit of value here to take it. Because Montreal, I don't think they're that far off from Ottawa, Buffalo. Florida's really banged up coming to the season. Boston's going to take a big step back. So I see that plus 1,700, and I have to place a small bet on it just because I just think there's a ton of value with the Canadiens here. If they can stay healthy, this season, I think that they could be a sneaky team that could compete for a playoff spot. And if they somehow do sneak into the playoffs, the guy there beside Andrew, Martin St. Louis, to win Jack Adams at plus 4,000. Yeah. If Montreal is somehow getting into the playoffs when they were supposed to be the worst, if they somehow make the playoffs, if you're betting that plus 1,700, you might as well bet that plus 4,000 as well, because I think they go hand in hand here. Who will have more goals is a really interesting one. Caulfield against Marner. I would be kind of tempted to look at Caulfield here. I think he could potentially. I think Marner is more of a playmaker, and I think Caulfield maybe. Who will have more points? Montreal for me, minus 115. Yes, of course. Everyone knows I don't like Chicago. We'll get to the Chicago preview show shortly, but I just think Montreal has a ton more depth than Chicago does. Chicago has one player, and then Taylor Hall, I guess. So I think minus 115. I think Montreal finishes with more points, and I think you should sprinkle plus 1,700 to make the playoffs, and St. Louis to win the Jack Adams at plus 4,000. I think they go hand in hand, and if this Canadiens team can stay healthy, I think there's value in both those plays.
Here, are you able to tell me what book that prop is from? Because I need to upload to that book right now and hammer it.
This is DraftKings.
Montreal
All these odds come from DraftKings.
Wow.
In their NHL futures section. And that's what I did, is I just went to DraftKings and looked at the different bets for different teams. And this is what I have for Montreal.
Wow.
Andrew, we'll go to you second this time. What do you think here? Future bets for Montreal?
I'll just say that there's two that stick off to me, and I guess you could say I'm playing it safe, but Caulfield over on his goals and the point total over 70.5. I think that the division's very competitive. I think there's, I like what you said there about how they're not that far off from the Senators. I think the Habs are just built a little bit different throughout their core. They might not have as much flash besides maybe Suzuki and Caulfield, and that's what people get all tripped up about. People love the Senators, but let's not forget the Senators, besides Tkachuk, are kind of turning into a little bit of a Leafs where it's a bunch of kind of hot shots. You add in Tarasenko. When's the last time that guy went into a corner and took a hit? Not very often. And, there's a lot of guys on the Canadiens that are willing to go into the corners, and that's pretty much the culture they're trying to build. So I'll take the over on points and Caulfield over.
Awesome. Nick, what do you think about the future bets here for Montreal?
Yeah, well, Terry put me on this Montreal show because at the end of I forgot what other show I did, the Detroit show, I said that one team I was looking at to potentially make the playoffs was this Montreal Canadiens team, and he cut out the end of that, and he said, join this show. I'll give it out. You say I'm not going full all the way? I'll give it out. Montreal Canadiens, 17-1 to make the playoffs. This is a team where I like them better than Ottawa. I mean, I like them better than Florida because Florida is going to be banged up to start the year. And if you start off the year really bad, you're not making the playoffs. Like if you're not close to the playoff line at American Thanksgiving, then you're probably not making the playoffs. And I can see a very slow start for Florida with all their injuries. And I think this will be a team that's going to be competing with Detroit, that's going to be competing with Buffalo and Boston for the wild card spot. And at 17-1, that's, I think, crazy value. there. I mean, I'm not saying put a full unit on it, something small, but 17-1, I've put stupider money on stupider bets. I mean, the over 70.5 is probably one of my favorite point totals this season because I see this team as a developmental version of what I saw Vegas last year as. I'm not saying they're winning the cup or anything like that, but the Vegas missed the playoffs the previous year before winning the cup. And if you looked at Vegas the previous year, more than half their team were on the IL in some way, shape, or form that season. That was the Montreal Canadiens last year. I mean, I mentioned this on a few previous slides that I felt when I was reading injury reports last season that it felt like everybody on their team in some way, shape, or form were on the IL. So this is a team that if they're healthy, they are going to be the most improved team in hockey this year. If they are the 10th healthier than they were last year, like because they missed so many games to injuries last year. Montreal minus 115 to finish with a better record than Chicago is laughable, in my opinion. I mean, I don't think that'll be remotely close. Minus 115, I'll take that if only it was legal in my state. But over 70.5 and to make the playoffs at 17-1, there's stupider bets out there than 17-1 to make the playoffs.
Like, I agree. And like I said, if you like to make the playoffs, you have to sprinkle on St. Louis to win the Jack Adams as well, because they go together. Because I can't see Montreal making the playoffs and St. Louis not winning the Jack Adams.
Exactly.
That would just shock me. But that is it. That is the Montreal Canadiens show. Jump back to the main screen. And thank you, Nick, for coming. Thank you, Andrew, for coming. It was a great show, guys. As I said earlier, make sure to follow everyone. Links are in the description below. Thanks for watching, guys. Thank you, everyone, so much for watching this NHL season preview show. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons as we continue on breaking down all 32 NHL teams, which will lead to the regular season when the Getting Wild with Terry and Friends NHL betting show will return. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Of course, make sure to follow everyone in the description below that was on today's show to show them some support. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you on the next show.